that is creative and appropriate to the situation. The last thing I have to say is something that I've only seen it once in the book of Disquiet, but it might be a common theme in poetry, but it's in section 298, where he's riding on the tram and he's looking at the collar of the dress of the girl sitting in front of him. And that collar takes him to the factory where it was made, the economics of that, the seamstresses, the whole social existence in factories and offices. He says, all humanities, the whole world opens up before my eyes merely because in front of me I see irregular dark green embroidery on a light green dress. And that, it's absolutely transcendently beautiful, this passage, and connects with what I'd like to finish with from Zarathustra, because it connects that with what I was saying about the interconnectedness, that this emptiness in the Buddhist tradition is a fullness in a way. It's empty of ego and of self, but it's a creative emptiness. There's room now for stuff to happen. Because everything is connected. And people say, but you don't have that in Nietzsche. Well, of course you do. It's in the drunken song in part 4 of Zarathustra. And it's the key to the thought of eternal recurrence, amor fati. How do we say yes to a world where we have everything that's going on that you read about in the papers every day, all the horrors. It's a horrible place. Did you ever say yes to a single joy? Zarathustra says. Oh, my friends, then you said yes to all woe as well. All things are chained together, entwined in love. They're verliebt. So I think you get this in Ficino, the idea of the interconnectedness of everything through eros. If you ever wanted one time, a second time, if ever you said, you please me, happiness, quick, moment, then you wanted it all back. All in you, all eternally, all chained together, entwined in love. Oh, then you loved the world. Thank you. And thank you for putting up with a bit of improvisation here and there.
So we're up to questions. Anyone has comment or question?
Yes. It's not strictly related to Pessoa and Nietzsche, but it's such a privilege for me to meet you. I have been an avid reader of your book, and for my PhD, I studied the relation between Nietzsche and Emerson.
Yes.
And so I'm particularly interested in this idea of the soul as something that empathizes or sympathizes with all human beings, with nature. John Cato has wrote a beautiful book about Emerson and self-reliance, and he maintains that Emerson's emphasis on self-reliance is completed by a sort of responsiveness to others that manifests itself in a sort of democratic ecstasy. So, in a way, the I expand in order to contain within himself all human beings, all the individuals. And I'm wondering if this kind of model can be applied also to Nietzsche, because in Nietzsche the eyes resound to the great man of the past, as within himself all the animal instinct, natural instinct. Okay, but I don't know. This is my question. Do you think that Nietzsche is as open as Emerson to include within himself all human beings, or he is a bit more aristocratic or selective?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. because I read some of Cato's work, but not that Emerson book. And when you mentioned democracy, yes, I thought, well, yeah, Nietzsche Nietzsche tends to follow Socrates in thinking it's a very sweet regime, multicolored and kind of charming in a way, but what a disaster. Yes, I think. In terms of the regime of the soul that Nietzsche is recommending, yes, I think it's. I mean, on the one hand, it has to confront the rabble in us. We, as individuals, have to confront the rabble in us, and at some level, love the rabble. This is amor fati. And that's what makes Zarathustra throw up several times and lays him out for a few days, when he's trying to affirm the rabble, and it's just too much nausea for him. He goes ekel, and falls flat in his face, or flat on his back. And it was, one of Nietzsche's big struggles, because he had, as you know, he had this dream of being descended from the Polish aristocracy, which was a complete fantasy of his. And yes, and had this very highly developed sense of smell. He keeps reminding us, the rabble was hard to take for him, because he says they stink. However, so that being said, I mean, what does that mean? It means that if we see broadly enough, we see not only that life has to be affirmed, not only its joys, as in that last passage, but its sufferings as well, all the suffering in the world. Not only the noble, the great figures of the past and so on, but the rabble as well. So at that level, yes, it had all that, everything, the whole, has to be the task for Nietzsche. It has to be loved. Amor fati cannot be. You can't say, I'm sorry, not the rabble. Or in willing eternal recurrence, you say, what? Wait a minute, the whole of my life, as it is up to this point, and this is where I get to the second point. I have to affirm that and say once again, wait a minute, what about being a teenager, adolescence? That was bad enough the first time around. I certainly don't want to go through that again. But amor fati, that idea lets me see that what was giving me problems then, all the things, the bad things that obstructed me from becoming myself, and I thought, no, those are not self, and nowadays so much in the world is absolutely other, not self. No, that's part of who we are. That has to be part of who we are. And so it has to be affirmed. But if you take the eternal recurrence from its gay science, the greatest heavyweight, the dwarf coming up to him and saying, what if you had to live this life? It's this life up to now, up to this moment. It doesn't say anything about the next moment, and the one after that, and the one after that. Because then I don't need to say we need the rabble, we need ISIS in Syria and in Iraq, we need, not long ago, that we needed George W. Bush. I mean, that was a real problem for eternal return. We had 8 years of him already. We had 8 years of him eternally. Well, yes, we do, I'm afraid, but not in the next moment. We can make damn sure we never make that mistake again, or we can work toward not making it again. The Holocaust, unless you are one of the many deniers of the Holocaust, that's going to have to come back again and again and again and again eternally, but we don't have to say, well, let's have another one in the next moment. No, we don't. So there's that. I mean, for Nietzsche, I think there's both the love of fate has to be part of it, and there's so many sort of, there are so many things in Nietzsche that can't be changed. But once you wake up, I mean, if you've read Nietzsche or Emerson, or if you've read something that has made you wake up, or had a teacher that's made you wake up, or an experience that's made you wake up, well, that feeling that we don't have to keep on going the way we've been going, it's not nothing is determined. That's that theory of temporality. Every moment is, as Pessoa said, disconnected from each other. There's a relationship between them, so that when we impose this notion of duration on it, we can sort of see, a flow happening. Looks like a film. In a film we're seeing just discrete moments and blackness in between. So, yes, I think Nietzsche, Emerson was enormously powerful influence on Nietzsche, and I think that, yes, in terms of either a regime for the soul or a regime for the world, political systems in the world as it is, Nietzsche was certainly, he saw all the dangers of democracy. And I think in terms of democracy of the soul, yeah, it would be kind of nice, and you're someone that does everything and every voice gets heard and so on. But for Nietzsche, that wouldn't be very interesting, it wouldn't be creative, and if it wouldn't be creative, it wouldn't be very interesting for the rest of us. And I think that one could elaborate a Nietzschean politics that would not be in any way democratic. I mean, it would not be democratic, but it wouldn't be, someone as far on the left as I am could get behind it, because it would be something that where one would do something about the inequalities in the world, because the aristocracy that Nietzsche talks about, and as Bartholomew said, I'm not able to think of much else at the moment other than Chinese philosophy and climate change. You have something in the whole Chinese tradition. They're very interested in meritocracy, which from Plato to Nietzsche until the middle of the 19th century, no one questioned in the Western tradition. Yeah. Doctoring, why don't we get the best, most competent people to be the doctors? There's a good idea. Shipbuilding, same thing. Ruling, governing, same thing. And many people in the Western tradition figured out ways to figure out who would be the best. Then, mid-19th century, we lost that in politics. It's coming back, but we lost it. And that's what I think Nietzsche, and certainly the whole Chinese political philosophy never missed this one. They still have some sort of meritocracy to this day in Beijing. But they say, when it comes to governing, let's get the best people in charge. We'll figure out how to do that. We have national examination systems. Anyone can apply. As in Plato, you can move between the strata. There's sort of social and political mobility. If kids that are meant to have gold in their souls turn out to be losers, well, let them be merchants instead. And if people with the iron turn out to have gold after all, well, let's promote them. So, it's a shame I don't know Cato's book, but and I'm thinking though. I mean, Emerson he's something of an aristocrat in his thinking too. I'm not sure how democratic Cato is able to make it. But yes, I think the answer is yes, as with Plato, that for Nietzsche, the most interesting things are going to happen. And certainly, of course, when he talks about high culture and slavery and so on, I mean, he's not, of course, in the past he's talked about literal slavery. Of course, when we look at the history of colonialism,